I'm Luca Lo Schiavo from ERRA Secretariat. Here with me, there is Zsuzsa Cseko from Eurelectric, and today we are here to talk about the Eurelectric report on distributed flexibility. Zsuzsa, it's many years that distributed flexibility is an important matter, let's say a fashionable issue. Eurelectric has decided to issue this paper now. What is the reason why you are engaged with that? And exactly what is it for, what distributed flexibility is for people that is not in the sector?
Hello, good morning to everyone, and thank you very much for this interview. The reason why we did this report is we wanted to show what have the DSO, so the distribution system operators, done since our last flexibility report. And in between the two reports, we also issued a report called Grids for Speed, which was focusing on the challenges of the distribution system operators across the European Union. What are these challenges and what is the investment ahead of us to reach the goals of the EU? So what we found within this report is that if we want to reach the EU goals of decarbonization and repower EU goals, electrification will be the most powerful way to do this. And if we would like to electrify, the network infrastructure is needed, and distribution systems are a very large part of the electricity networks. Within this report, we made a modeling throughout the European countries in a bottom-up way, exactly the same way how the DSO system operators, the distribution system operators do it on their own. We have modeled this system based on the investment data of our distribution system operator members, as well as the statistical data. So we have a very relevant database. And what we concluded is that the current amount of investments is fluctuating around 40 billion. It has climbed up a little bit since we have done this report. So the report was done in 2024 and the data is from 2023. In order to connect all the renewables and industrial or smaller end users to the network, and to electrify transport and heating systems as well, the investments on the distribution level need to be doubled, which leads to a number of 67 billion euros yearly until 2050. Of course, this number is quite a huge number. So therefore, we also analyzed what are the strategies which could lower this number. And we came up with 3 strategies and certain technological tools. The 3 strategies are anticipatory investments, which means that the DSOs shall plan ahead and invest ahead. And this way they can save up around 6 billion euros yearly. Another tool is to use the existing network assets to their maximum efficiency, maximum potential by means of asset management. And the third tool is flexibility. So that is why we wanted to write a report what are the DSOs doing currently within the field of flexibility. But I would like to highlight that we would suggest to use all three strategies. Flexibility is one of them. It's a powerful tool, but we cannot forget about the other tools.
Thank you. Thank you. And I see from figure 1 in your report that flexibility has substantially 4 main mechanisms: rules-based, tariffs, connection agreements, and even markets. Of course, these are at different stages, and this variety seems exactly the same as suggested by CR, the Council of European Energy Regulators, in a report dating 2018. Every country should adopt its own mix. Do you agree on that point? Does Eurelectric share this view? And so far, which steps have been reached since the very seminal report of CR?
Yes, we definitely agree with CER. So what we see that, for example, for network tariffs, this is a tool which the member states use for a longer time. Certain member states use it for a longer time. It is a very valuable tool, but all the other tools like flexible connection agreements and both rules-based and market-based approaches are similarly important. So what we suggest that the DSOs can choose from these tools, and the regulators allow the DSOs to choose. The preferred option based on the directive shall be the market-based option. However, it is not always feasible. So that is the reason why we suggest to use all 4 sources.
Thank you. Thank you. You cited the French case, because of course France has a very long history with time-use tariffs. This, if you look at concrete cases, I think that the most valuable thing of the report is that it has a lot of cases. France emerges as the most advanced country, but not only for tariffs, but also for other approaches. Like, for instance, very interesting is the Reflex project that integrates flexibility directly in the design of stations. What have the French done so differently to be this far ahead, in your opinion?
The French examples are quoted in, as you mentioned, in several mechanisms. One of them is the static time of use tariffs. These have a very long history in France. So it already started in the 1960s, and in the 70s and the 80s, the residential customers and small customers were also included. And what is very important for the efficient use of time of use tariffs is that the end customers knows it well, understands it, and then uses it. Of course, the design of the network tariff shall reflect the network need, but it has to be stable for some period that the customers know it, and then they can use it. And this is one of the main success factors overall, and this was one of the success factors in France. They also have a very targeted and specific smart meter product called Linky, and this product is this appliance is can be linked to appliances within the at the end user, and the end user doesn't need to switch on and off anything. So if it is linked, then they can automatically benefit from the time of use tariffs. So this gives a comfort to the end customer. And these are very important criteria for the use of this of the time of use tariffs. On
May I ask you, there is a sort of counter example in the report about tariffs, because in Spain, it seems they have a very sophisticated tariff structure, even 6 different periods for large customers, with significant differences between peak and off-peak. But the report shows that consumers' behaviors didn't change. How is this possible in your understanding? Is the price signal alone not enough? What else is relevant for implementing flexibility through network tariff?
Yes, so the Spanish have a very detailed static time of use tariff system. It is also reflecting the congestions within the system. However, the whole landscape within the energy system was changed with the energy transition. There is a huge upturn in renewables, including the household size photovoltaic PV panels. And these PV panels are no longer acting like the traditional, so they no longer respond to the price signals as customers would do. So actually the PVs changed the system. So it's no longer valid that within off-peak there are lower prices and in the peak and in the peak period there are higher prices. So the PVs changed this landscape, and that's why unfortunately the Spanish were not that successful.
This is due to the static approach to peak and off-peak, I mean.
So it's so no. So the static time of use tariffs are very granular, and they are responding to the network congestions, but the end user, together with its PV panel, is not responding to the price signals, because after the war in Ukraine started, many customers were afraid to have power cuts, and the PV panels are booming in Spain, and they just use the PV panels to their maximum potentials. So whenever the sun shines, they are using it and they are not curtailing it. And that's why this sort of behavior is a new type of behavior. So the tariffs have to be also reflecting them.
Thank you. A last case is interesting is Portugal, where they launched the pilot and they already got tangible results with offers for 36 megawatts. So I understand that from the Portuguese case, that simplicity is the key for market flexibility, for flexibility markets. But my question is, Portuguese pilot simplicity is truly scalable at regime scale, or is only a small pilot?
So at the moment, this is a pilot, and the aim here was to support network restoration when network failures occur, also to support the scheduled maintenance work and to manage the peak consumption. So these were the aims. The simplification is very important. So within the Portuguese pilot, the duration of the contracts were at node level were 2 years, which also gives stability, and it was used for a so how to complement network reinforcement, but not to replace it. And due to the simplicity, this was a successful use case, However, there is no imbalance correction and no counter activation within this pilot. Now this will be gradually increased, but of course the market has to be fine-tuned when it is going to scale.
Thank you. Stay on the market-based procurement because, as you said before, this is the preferred solution according to EU directive. But so far we know that it is still relatively not mature, let's say, enough. Even your report say there are only piloting solutions so far. There is a paradox because it is the most seated mechanism in regulatory discussion, but still is the least used. Why is this gap? There is this gap between hype, let's say, and reality, in your opinion?
So the market-based solution exists in a few member states, and it is piloted in another 5 member states. And this would be the target for all member states based on the electricity directive. But as you mentioned, so this is a process. The market-based solution has to be evolved. What our members see from their own experience is that such as the Portuguese, it's very important to start a pilot or a regulatory sandbox and to test on the market on the local in a local environment and to learn. And what they suggest is to start, even if the market, even if this pilot is small, even if it's not perfect, and even if the rules are simplified, because otherwise, so it has a long learning curve, and no one is able to immediately start a perfect local flexibility market. And also the national regulatory authorities and all the stakeholders shall be supporting this development, and all stakeholders shall be aware of all the technical and organizational and legal mechanisms around the flexibility markets. So it includes a lot of costs in assets, in IT systems, a lot of contractual relations. There are a lot of stakeholders included from the service providers, through suppliers, and of course the distribution system operators. So it is important to start. However, the first go might not be a perfect solution.
Thank you. And I like the report because it's frank. I read from page 27, regulatory frameworks, which today mainly focus on residential customers, should instead have a more balanced focus on the amount of flexibility that can be delivered per side. So substantially, the narrative, let's say the political narrative, pushes on household consumer empowerment, but the cost to enable flexibility are largely fixed per side. And Eurelectric clarified that sometimes this means that residential flexibility can be uneconomic. Do you want to explain better this point for large public? Because I think it's very, very important.
Yes, of course. For example, in France, where there is a long history of the use of flexibility, residential customers were included, but so the number of the customers or the number of flexibility sites are 99% residentials. However, within the capacity, they only provide 15% of the total capacity. there are also larger but still low voltage customers, around 2,000, who contribute to half of the flexibility capacity within the system. And there are also a few medium voltage sites who provide the rest of the capacity. So what we see is that the costs, so the metering and measurement and controllability devices are not independent, but mostly independent of the size of a flexibility site. Whereas the flexibility which is provided by the site is, of course, dependent on the capacity. So therefore, a large flexibility provider will be much more efficient in terms of costs than a smaller one in relative terms. And that is why we suggest that, yes, residential customers shall be encouraged and included in the market, but the regulator shall not forget about the larger low voltage and also the medium voltage and larger customers.
Okay, thank you. Another point of frankness is about the relationship between flexibility and grid investments. At the end of the Portuguese chapter, there is a disclaimer. Flexibility can complement certain investments, but cannot replace them. You explained in the introduction that flexibility is intended to reduce, to mitigate the enormous impact on investments. But this point seems to take distances. So of course, we must be aware that flexibility is not magics. When flexibility is effective and when it's not.
So, as you already referred to the beginning, so we would like to suggest to use all kinds of investment strategies. And of course, one very prudent approach is to use what we already have and to make to use the assets to their maximum potential. Another one is flexibility. But this also has a limited scope. So if a new, residential area or a large industrial customer wants to connect, the network operators have to connect them. Also, it's not only small, medium, or larger customers, but what we can see that the heating and the transport sectors through for example, the heat pumps and the electric vehicles are also electrified. So there are large connection queues throughout Europe, mainly caused by renewables, but also by the electrification of the other sectors. And of course, there are some new residential or larger medium or larger industrial customers. So there is a huge need for the expansion of the existing grid, and flexibility will not solve this issue.
Thank you. Thank you. We are now closing this interview with the last question. ERRA, as you know, has many members that don't belong to the European Union. After this report and with your experience at Eurelectric, what can you suggest to a non-new national regulator, member of ERRA, that is going to start almost from scratch about flexibility? What to do, what to avoid?
So as we already discussed to some extent before, we would suggest that the regulators allow all 4 types of flexibility mechanisms, and the DSOs shall be allowed to choose within these 4 mechanisms. Also, we suggest to start the market-based procurement by pilots and learning by doing, and gradually extend it, the pilot to larger scale. We also think that a key component is to inform and involve the customers and to educate them. And another key would be that the participants in the flexibility market are reliable. So the whole ecosystem shall work together, and within this ecosystem, DSOs shall choose the optimal solution for their networks, and the regulation shall also help or incentivize both DSOs to use flexibility and also the flexibility providers to locate their sites in the areas where the network needs it. Maybe these would be the suggestions.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Zsuzsa. Extremely interesting, and hope to meet you again for the next Eurelectric report that I'm sure will be as interesting as this. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Goodbye.